Well, we've got a special guest with us now, so I'd like to introduce her. She's been fighting professionally since 2006. She has a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and fights out of Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. She has a professional record of 14 wins against only 1 loss, with 10 of her wins coming by way of knockout. She'll be fighting in the Strikeforce Women's Bantamweight division on March 3rd in Las Vegas, Nevada, against Alexis Davis. I'm talking about Sarah Kaufman. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
It's wonderful having you on the show, Sarah.
No, it's always great to talk to you guys.
Well, let me ask you a question. Last week we had an interview with Miesha Tate, and she basically said that she thought Ronda Rousey was kind of given an opportunity that was really not fair for her to get. And she even mentioned you specifically as being a much more deserving opponent. How do you feel about comments like that?
I mean, it's absolutely true. I think I think the fans know that, and I think that even Strikeforce understands that as a hierarchy and as a ranking system, I am the fight with Miesha Tate that was logical, and that was right for the standings in the 135-pound division with Strikeforce. And, Strikeforce, I know they took the opportunity of riding off of Ronda Rousey's last win with Julia Budd. They took that, and her calling out and, just talking a lot and talking a lot more and then talking some more after that. They took that and they kind of ran with it in terms of promoting this fight and trying to get, I think, viewers who don't normally watch MMA, to try and make this a big fight, really pushing their looks and pushing the fact that Ronda is so loud. And it's gotten her this far, but ultimately, I'm really pissed. This is, this is the fight that I'm supposed to have, and regardless of the fact that I have a different fight, and I like fighting and I want to stay active, I want what's right and I want what I've earned and what I've worked hard for. And Miesha's worked hard to get to where she is. She's put in her time. It's just really hard to see other people coming in and kind of taking over in a spot that they've never even fought at 135 pounds.
And, that's a good point, but we've seen a lot of people coming into MMA from outside fields. And some of them, in some ways, you almost have to give them their credit, and others you almost feel like they're given a free pass, so to speak, like in this case with Ronda Rousey. But, like, for example, Brock Lesnar giving a title shot in his third fight, and yet, in some ways, because MMA is still a tremendously growing sport, do you think it's the promoters that kind of give preference to some of the people that have names or accomplishments in other areas when they come into MMA over the workhorses like yourself who've got these phenomenal records and a record of so many wins? It's ridiculous.
I think it's a bit of both, and I think there is something to be said, for viewership, and clearly it's an entertainment sport and you need to bring people in. And I think you can promote anybody and make them successful in whatever way you want. And definitely promotions pick who they want to push and who they don't or who they aren't pushing currently. And a lot of it is self-promotion. And as I say, Ronda talks a lot. I'm not one to talk a lot of trash, and that's me. And, clearly I've been stepped over because of that, or at least partly because of that. But thinking about Brock Lesnar, I mean, he had a huge fan base coming in, whereas Ronda is still developing a fan base. So I think that's one big difference. But also, Brock fought some tough guys right off the bat, and fought at heavyweight and then fought for the title at heavyweight. And you look at Ronda, and she hasn't fought anybody. Sure, she has impressive wins, four wins by armbar, but against people who don't have any pedigree behind them in anything else, or not much else. Julia Budd is a kickboxer who's done decently well in kickboxing, but again, no one of the level that Brock has. And as I say, she's never fought at 135 pounds, so to come down and get that title shot over me, it's really hard to swallow. And it's really discouraging as a fighter and as someone who's been pushing the division forward for so long, and really lobbying to get 5-minute rounds. That was after the Miesha Tate fight, and to get so many other things, to get on the main cards. I just feel like I've been really pushing, and at this point it's frustrating. It almost makes me want to, the political side makes me want to stop fighting sometimes.
Well, those of us who are followers of the sport agree with you in the sense that when we see a record like yours, and I've seen you've got some pretty impressive wins, so I do think even though maybe the promoters have kowtowed to some level of bringing in outside talent, you see guys like Mo Lawal and others that come from a wrestling background that may have a small fan base and are trying to build up a following, especially with the struggles that Strikeforce is going through right now. That may give them some logic to this event, but the truth of the matter is it only works if the person they're putting forward can win. And I'm not yet convinced, like you said, that Ronda has successfully proven herself because the quality of her opponents is very low. So, if she goes out and loses this fight, then, you've just lost somebody that's a big talker and generates a lot of attention. On the other hand, if she does happen to win, then I do think that you may be the next person in line to show her what it's really all about.
Let me jump in if I could, Tom. Hi, Sarah. This is Jim. Welcome back to the show.
Jim.
We appreciate you taking time off Super Bowl and training to speak with us today. But I think what Sarah said, she nails it on the head. It's a marketing ploy by the brass of Strikeforce, who are trying to put together this potential, whatever you want to call it. If it's to brand it as these sexy ladies that are out there fighting, but Sarah absolutely has a legitimate beef with the brass by passing her up. Obviously, she beat Miesha Tate a couple years back, right, Sarah?
Yeah, 2009.
Right, and obviously she should have been the person that took that spot, but because this was a marketing ploy, it really disgusts me and how we always try to promote women MMA down here in South Florida. I really. It's very disappointing as a fan and a person who speaks with these athletes on a regular basis.
Sure. Well, let me.
Yeah, and I think I've heard that from a lot of fans, and a lot of fans have really showed their support, and I do appreciate that. And as I say, I just need to, do what I need to do, and I think as long as you keep winning, you're going to get your chance. It should be in certain orders, but at the same time, I've been guaranteed if I beat Alexis Davis on March 3rd, whoever wins that fight is guaranteed a title shot coming right from the horse's mouth there.
Well, that's awesome. Let me ask you another question with regard to all of the fury over Chris Cyborg Santos and the failed drug tests and all that. How much has that affected, from your perspective on the inside, women's MMA?
Honestly, I don't think it's as big of a deal as everyone is thinking it's going to be or has been. Chris Cyborg was out of fighting for a year and a half between her fight with Jan Finney and then her last fight in December. And another year off, I don't think, it's unfortunate as a fighter who wants to wait a year and a half between fights. You get caught for stuff, you do your time, you come back, you fight strong. And, Chris will always have a fan following. Who knows, someone else might, step up. Maybe it's Ronda, maybe it's myself, maybe it's Miesha, whoever it is. It's great to see more names getting out there in the first place and really helping, just as the public in general know that there are more females. I think Chris will come back and she'll be fine. I just don't know who they have to fight because she's definitely a strong, big girl, and not many females are of that weight, and clearly none are of the same caliber based on all the fights that she's had pretty much since Marloes Kunin. It's just been a struggle to find people who are worthy of fighting for the title.
As a spectator, I think a lot of us think that maybe the steroids are the answer to why she was so dominant and why she was so overpowering against so many of her opponents. And that's where, unfortunately, I agree with you that it doesn't affect the women's MMA as a whole as much because it's one isolated person and one isolated incident. But I do think that it does send this message that, really it may be more of a reason for her dominance than was earlier thought. And from that standpoint, we want to see, that whole issue be off to the side. We don't want to think about the steroids being something that's used on a regular basis for so many of the fighters. Another question is, with the Strikeforce being bought by Zuffa, and they've had some very disappointing showings in the last couple of events. Does that, seem to threaten you in terms of women's MMA because of the stand that the UFC has taken towards women in MMA?
I actually feel that Strikeforce as a whole, Zuffa is trying to do some really good things, and I mean they are supporting the women thus far. And I signed a new contract after they purchased Strikeforce, and after they signed the new contract with Showtime. So they are signing people, which is a great thing, and I think that's a really positive thing, and it's a great platform. I really do hope that Strikeforce does stick around for longer than just the term that they've discussed with Showtime, because I think Zuffa clearly knows what they're doing. They've put together the UFC, but there are a lot of MMA events going on right now. I don't know how many the UFC has. It must be, I think I heard a rumor of up to 30 events in 2012, just the UFC alone, and that's a lot of MMA, and it's a lot of fighting. And I don't think every fan can go to every fight, and I'm sure that partially has to do with why attendance hasn't been as high at the events. But I do hope to see it pick up, and I'll do everything I can to keep that fan support coming, and do what I can to push the sport forward and get the Strikeforce name out there.
Well, I appreciate that, because as a follower of MMA, I am a strong supporter of women in MMA, because I think that they bring a lot of excitement to the sport. A lot of the names are well known, and the women that are out there that are on the top of the pack are extremely skilled. And the thing that concerns me as a follower of MMA, we've seen basically the UFC skim some of the male fighters, the talent. They basically depleted the heavyweight division in Strikeforce. They pulled Nick Diaz. They've basically stripped it down, and there's fear that what's left is not going to allow Strikeforce to stay together long, and Zuffa hasn't really offered women opportunities in the UFC. And for me, I want to see the female fighters, because I feel like their fights have a higher percentage of exciting fights over a lot of the men. So I'm hoping, like you said, that Strikeforce is around for a long time. Maybe they build up their pool of women fighters since Zuffa's taken all the heavyweights and some of the other classes. So it's an exciting thing to see where it's going to go. And, of course, Strikeforce, along with Bellator, they're both committed to the female fighters, and that's a good thing to see, because Bellator also has some good names in the female fighting area.
Absolutely. And I do think that it would be great to see the UFC balance out some of their fighters into Strikeforce, because Strikeforce is a good promotion and has the opportunity and ability to have a good platform for fighters to compete in, just one other avenue. And it'll be interesting to see if they drop some of the maybe bigger names who haven't done as well recently, just to mix it up a little bit into Strikeforce. I know they're getting rid of the heavyweights and sending all the ones they want over to the UFC, but it'll be kind of a waiting game to see what they do with the lower weight classes, and if they do start filtering down some people as well to bring up the fights, and just the name value of bringing in UFC fans to Strikeforce if they're not already.
Do you think at any time during your career that you'll see women fighting in the UFC?
I would definitely like to think so, and I would like to be the first fighter in there. I want to be the first one in the door, and I've said that the whole time. Realistically, I'm not sure what they're going to do. Bringing in the 125er soon to the UFC is, that's a lot of divisions to have. The 25, 35, 45, 55, 70, and then all the other ones above. It's already a lot. So to have females in there as well, I don't know what they're thinking. And as I say, I'll do everything I can to put on good fights every time. I want to knock Alexis out. I knocked her out before, and it would just be great to get another knockout, to really solidify that this is where I am. I want the title shot, and we deserve to be where everyone else is, at a world-class, top of the pack level.
Well, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, Miesha Tate that said she would love to see the UFC have a kind of super fight, since they're not going to bring in, a whole pool of female fighters. If they just showcased a couple of top fighters, maybe that would be a great thing for you and her to fight in a UFC event, and that might be the floodgate that opens the door for women fighters in the UFC, because I do think there would be a tremendous response to the women fighters.
I agree as well. I think the sport has come a long way, and it really is a sport now. And there's always going to be the chauvinistic type who, will Twitter comments saying, get back in the kitchen, go do baking, or whatever else they say. But for the most part, it's a really educated, or at least getting to be a really educated crowd and fan base that's really supportive of the females.
Well, that's awesome. Are you feeling well prepared for your fight now? I mean, it is a month away or so.
Yeah, just under a month, 4 weeks as of yesterday, and I'm feeling great this training camp with my coach, Adam Zuzek. All my teammates at Zuma has been really, really good. I'm feeling really strong and just in really good shape, especially so far out from the fight. And I'm taking this fight as a title fight. That's what my mentality. That's me going into it. I know that Alexis Davis is tough. She will take shots. She will stand there. She will kind of bury her way in and try and kind of grind out that win. And I don't want a grinding fight in terms of stalling on the cage and that kind of thing. And it's sometimes hard. I've fought other people, and that's their goal, is to get away from me and not get the distance to let my hands go. And as I say, that's what I want. I want a knockout. I want to have 11 knockouts, not just 10. And it should be a great fight.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure you're going to pull out a victory there. And I do think that you're right, that your opponent has more to gain from this fight than you do. And it may be something she gets really up for. But I'm glad to see that you're really not taking her for granted. She's a skilled fighter, and you're prepared for it. So we're wishing you the best. Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout-out to before we go to a commercial break?
I just want to say thank you again for the time with you guys, and I actually we got bumped off of the main card, unfortunately, since Jacare is now fighting, and I'm definitely not happy about that, because I do want everyone to see the fight between Alexis and I and know that both of us are for real, and that both of us deserve to be in the title contention, and I deserve to have the title fight. And so make sure you watch, support Showtime, support Strikeforce. The prelims will be on Showtime Showtime Extreme, which is just before the Showtime broadcast. So
Sure.
Please support us. Watch March 3rd, and just thank you to everyone who's been there so far. And I need that to make sure that I stay in the game, and that I'm around MMA for a long time.
Absolutely. So how can our listeners follow you? You have a web page or a Twitter account?
I do. I have a blog on www.sarahkaufman.ca. I'm also on Twitter. Please follow me at MMA Sarah. Don't always talk trash, but every once in a while I'll sling it out there if I need to. And
That's awesome.
And other than that, I'm also on Facebook, facebook.com/sarahkaufman.mma.
Well, we really appreciate it, Sarah. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to join us here tonight. We wish you the best of success in your upcoming bout, and we hope to talk to you again after an upcoming victory.
Thanks so much, and if you get a chance, hope you enjoy the Super Bowl.
Thank you.